The young woman stood outside the restaurant with one hand pressed against her stomach and the other tightly gripping a small, worn wallet. Through the wide glass windows, she could see families laughing over warm meals, children reaching for desserts, and waiters carrying plates that smelled far better than anything she had eaten in days. She had finally gathered enough courage to walk inside, sit down, and order a simple meal. But when the bill arrived, her face went pale. She quietly counted the few crumpled notes in her wallet again and again, hoping the numbers would somehow change. They didn't. She lowered her eyes, whispered that she couldn't afford the meal, and walked toward the door. She thought nobody had noticed. She was wrong. Someone at the corner table had been watching her from the moment she entered. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness can give someone a second chance when life has almost taken everything away, please like this video, leave a comment, share this story with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Kindness Corner 2.0. Your support helps these emotional stories reach more people. Her name was Alara Bennett, 24 years old, and that afternoon she was wearing a simple blue cotton shirt, faded black trousers, and old white shoes that had clearly survived more than they were meant to. Her dark brown hair was tied into a loose ponytail, and beneath her tired eyes was the quiet exhaustion of someone who had learned to keep going without expecting anyone to rescue her. Alara had not planned to enter the restaurant that day. She had been walking through the busy downtown street looking for work when the smell of freshly baked bread stopped her. She had skipped breakfast. The day before, she had eaten only a small bowl of rice. Her stomach hurt, but she kept telling herself that hunger was temporary. Losing hope was more dangerous. For the last 3 months, Alara had been struggling to find stable work. The small apartment she shared with her younger brother, Milo, was already behind on rent. Milo was 17 and still attending school. Their parents had passed away years earlier, leaving Alara to become the person who kept their little family together. She had worked wherever she could, cleaning offices, organizing shelves, delivering documents, helping at a bakery, but every job had eventually disappeared. That morning, she had attended an interview at a clothing store. The manager had smiled politely and told her they would call if something became available. Alara knew what that meant. It meant no. She had walked for nearly 2 hours afterward, carrying a folder filled with copies of her resume. Her feet hurt, her stomach was empty, and she had only a few coins left. Then she saw the restaurant. It wasn't the fanciest place in the city, but it looked warm and welcoming. A handwritten board outside advertised a lunch special. Alara stood there for several minutes before convincing herself that she could spend a little money on food. Just one meal. She entered quietly. A waiter led her to a small table near the window. Alara ordered the least expensive meal on the menu and a glass of water. For a few minutes, she allowed herself to forget everything. When the plate arrived, steam rose from the food, and her eyes briefly closed. It was the first meal in days that looked like something she could actually enjoy. She ate slowly, trying to make every bite last. But when the bill arrived, she froze. The restaurant had a lunch special, but the price on the menu had not included several additional charges. Alara stared at the total. Her hand trembled. She opened her wallet. One $20 note. 3 smaller notes. A few coins. She counted twice. Then a third time. Still not enough. Her cheeks became hot with embarrassment. She looked around, hoping nobody was watching. Several customers were talking among themselves. A waiter passed by without noticing. At the corner table, however, a man had quietly lowered his newspaper. His name was Adrian Cole. He was 38, dressed in a simple gray shirt and dark trousers. Although he owned several successful businesses, he had deliberately avoided flashy clothing for years. He believed that wealth meant very little if it made a person forget what it felt like to struggle. Adrian noticed Alara's hands shaking. He watched as she quietly called the waiter over and explained that she had misunderstood the price. Her voice was barely audible. She apologized repeatedly and offered the money she had. The waiter looked uncomfortable. He didn't want to embarrass her, but the restaurant had rules. Elara finally stood. She apologized once more, picked up her old handbag, and began walking toward the door. She didn't cry. That was what caught Adrian's attention. She looked like someone who had become so accustomed to disappointment that even humiliation had become ordinary. Elara reached the doorway. Then Adrian stood. He didn't shout across the restaurant or make a scene. He simply walked toward her. Outside, bright afternoon sunlight filled the sidewalk. Cars moved along the street, people hurried past, and the city continued as if nothing important had happened. Adrian stopped several steps away from her. He told her that she had forgotten something. Elara turned around, confused. She checked her handbag, thinking she had left something behind. She hadn't. Adrian pointed toward the restaurant. He told her that she had already paid. Elara immediately shook her head. She hadn't. Adrian explained that he had taken care of the bill. But instead of handing her money, he did something she wasn't expecting. He asked her to sit back down and finish her meal. Elara refused. She was embarrassed. She didn't want charity. Adrian understood. So he told her something that changed the conversation completely. He said that years earlier, when he was struggling, a stranger had bought him lunch without asking questions. That stranger hadn't made him feel poor. He had simply reminded Adrian that difficult seasons eventually end. Adrian wasn't asking Elara to owe him anything. He was simply returning something that had once been given to him. Elara stood silently. For the first time that afternoon, her eyes filled with tears. She went back inside. But instead of eating immediately, she asked Adrian why he had helped her. He looked toward the window and told her that sometimes people don't need someone to solve their entire life. Sometimes they just need one person to notice that they're having a difficult day. Elara finally sat down. She finished her meal. For the first time in weeks, she tasted food without worrying about whether she would have enough money left afterward. But the story didn't end with a free lunch. The next morning, Adrian returned to the restaurant and asked the manager about Elara. He learned that she had left her resume behind. He read it. There was something unusual about it. Elara had no impressive degree or powerful connections, but her resume showed years of practical experience. She had worked in customer service, inventory management, bookkeeping, and event organization. She had even helped run a small community food program before her family's situation became difficult. Adrian owned a growing community services company. He had been searching for someone to manage a new neighborhood assistance project. Elara's experience was exactly what he needed. But he didn't simply hand her a job. He called her and invited her to an interview. Elara arrived the next day wearing the same blue shirt, carefully ironed, and carrying her resume in a plastic folder. She expected another rejection. Instead, Adrian asked her questions about how she handled difficult situations, how she treated people who were struggling, and what she would do if she were given the chance to help an entire community. Elara answered honestly. She spoke about her brother. She spoke about losing her parents. She spoke about how humiliating it felt to ask for help. And then she said something Adrian never forgot. She said that if she ever had enough power to help someone, she would make sure they never felt ashamed for needing it. Adrian offered her the position. Elara stared at him in disbelief. She asked whether he was offering her the job because of the restaurant. He said no. He was offering it because she had the ability to understand people who were often ignored. Her first months at the company were difficult. Elara had to learn new systems, manage schedules, coordinate volunteers, and speak with people who were facing problems far greater than hers. She made mistakes. Some days she came home exhausted. But she never stopped learning. Within 6 months, the community program had become one of the company's most successful projects. Elara created a system that provided affordable meals, employment workshops, and temporary assistance for families facing sudden hardship. And she remembered the restaurant. One afternoon, almost a year after the day she couldn't afford her lunch, Elara walked back through those same glass doors. This time, she wasn't alone. Behind her were several young volunteers carrying boxes of donated food. The restaurant manager recognized her immediately. Elara smiled and explained that she had come to propose a partnership. Her organization wanted to work with local restaurants to create a program where unsold fresh meals could safely be distributed to families who needed them. The restaurant agreed. Soon, dozens of meals that might otherwise have gone unused were reaching people across the neighborhood. Then one afternoon, something unexpected happened. A young mother entered the restaurant with her little daughter. She looked nervous and kept checking her wallet. She ordered the cheapest meal available, then quietly realized she didn't have enough. She stood and began walking toward the door. Elara happened to be there. She recognized that look immediately. She walked toward the woman and gently stopped her. The young mother looked frightened. Elara smiled and told her that her meal had already been paid for. The woman asked who had paid. Elara looked toward Adrian, who was sitting at the corner table. He simply smiled. The young mother began to cry. Elara sat with her and told her that accepting kindness wasn't weakness. Sometimes accepting help was simply the beginning of being able to help someone else. Years later, Elara would still remember that first lunch. Not because of the food. Not because someone had paid her bill. But because, at the exact moment she believed the world had stopped seeing her, one person had noticed. That single act of kindness had given her something more valuable than a meal. It had given her the courage to believe that her life could change. And eventually, she became the person who helped change the lives of others. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe to Kindness Corner 2.0. Sometimes a small act of compassion can travel much farther than we ever imagine. And before the story ends, here's a special request. Comment, "Kindness comes back," if you believe that one good deed can change someone's life. Because sometimes, the person walking away from a restaurant isn't asking for a miracle. They may simply be hoping that someone notices. And sometimes, all it takes is one person stopping them to remind them that they are not invisible, their struggle is not their identity, and their story is not over. A meal may last 20 minutes. A kind word may last a few seconds. But the hope created by that kindness can last a lifetime.